Are you interested in the parts of history that remain a mystery? Do you want to learn more about the historical myths and misconceptions used to prop up false belief today? I'm Nathaniel Lloyd. In my podcast, Historical Blindness, I delve into all of these topics, sharing puzzling tales from the past and examining hoaxes, conspiracy theories, and misremembered events that provide insight into modern politics and religion. New episodes every 2 weeks. Find Historical Blindness on most podcast players and platforms.
Hello everyone, Takuya here.
And I'm Gabby.
And we are the hosts of History of Everything, a podcast which you can probably guess by the name is, it's about everything. Do you want to know why people thought potatoes were evil and would give you syphilis? Are you curious about all the stories of the terrible and stupid ways that people have kicked the bucket over the years? Do you want to hear tales about all of the different badasses of history and the lives that they had brought to life? Well, if so, then look no further. History of Everything is just the right podcast for you. It's available on Spotify, Pandora, and anywhere else that you get your podcast from. Join us for some fun and just see how weird and wacky history can be.
What follows may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
The world is full of stories. Stories of mysteries, of curiosities, of oddities. Join Kat and Jethro Gilligan Toth for the strange, the bizarre, the unexpected, as they lift the lid and cautiously peer inside the box of oddities.
Hey freaks, welcome to the very first edition of the Inbox of Oddities. This is an idea I've been trying to get Kat to do for years, and she's been like, no, I don't really. But finally she's agreed.
You're a liar, is what you are.
Kat came up with this idea, 3 years ago. Anyway, and the idea is that we've always wanted to share more of the correspondence that we get from you.
Yeah, you guys have such great stories and insights, and sometimes you know someone who was kidnapped by Ted Bundy. So we want to hear from you, and when we do, we want to be able to share it. So this is an opportunity to just focus on that shit.
And again, if you have a strange experience, or if you just have a funny story you want to share, you can email us, curator@theboxofoddities.com, and you could end up in the box of oddities, in the inbox of oddities.
In the inbox.
In the inbox.
Maybe we should have a special Inbox of Oddities intro. Like, it could be like, dun, 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 but like, you know how The Wire every season would have the same song, but they'd have it re-recorded, you know, different versions of
Slightly different.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll work on that. God, I love The Wire. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to start the Inbox of Oddities. During the Halloween season, leading up to our annual Halloween episodes, we had several submissions that weren't voice submissions. They were just written. And you and I, we don't do it justice during the Halloween episodes. And so I wanted to have an opportunity to read these incredible stories that were sent to us. And that's what I'm going to do right now. Thank you very much. This is from Katie. Hi, Kat and Jethro. My name is Katie, which is why she said that, because it's her name. Is I've written in one other time, and I was super excited to hear it read. I wanted to write in for your October listener stories. I've had more than a few experiences, but most of them happened in my late teens and early 20s. Interesting. One of the handful of incidents occurred at my grandparents' house in Texas after my grandmother passed away, involving one of the handmade items my grandfather made while serving time in prison. My grandfather was a military officer, a polyglot who knew 7 languages.
Oh my God.
Including French, Dutch, Vietnamese, Korean, German, English, Spanish, and a few more I can't remember.
Polyglot is such a great word.
It really is. And of course, he was also likely a genius. And starting his retirement, he became bored. Smart people and boredom never mix well. And despite good intentions, he made some decisions that were meant to help people, but ultimately were illegal in nature. which is a great way to phrase that. It seems as though they happen to be, unfortunately, illegal in nature. My grandfather went to prison right as my mother was finishing college. It definitely was not a happy time for anyone, but it did mean that my grandfather had a lot of time on his hands. Mandated time out. He made a few friends in prison with members of the mob and a jeweler. Although we don't know much about them or their reasons for being there besides what you could imagine a mobster would be in prison for, we do know that the jeweler taught my grandfather how to make pendants and other items. He made 2 cross pendants while in prison, and one other item which I stumbled across in a dresser of a room I stayed in while living in the house. This room also had a full secret room behind the back wall of the closet, which I didn't learn about until moving in.
I want a secret room.
I know. By this time, they had both passed away. I had never known my grandfather, and despite some obvious notoriety due to his prison stay, everyone only ever said nice things about him. It was, however, widely known in the family how crass he could be and that he enjoyed catching people off guard. He was the kind of man to abandon his pants as soon as he stepped foot in the house and existed strictly in loose-fitting boxers inside the home, as my mom puts it.
We were talking the other night, what would we like for our epitaph? I think that would be mine.
Existed solely in loose-fitting boxers.
That'll work.
This included times when she had dates come over. He would stare them down and question them over intentions, all while exclusively clothed in said boxers.
Nice.
While manspreading in the date's direction.
Oh, no. Not in the loose-fitting boxers.
The item I'd stumbled upon was a watch he had made himself while he was away. It had a wide leather band and a watch face painted black with white Roman numerals and no glass covering on the face. My room was next to the room over from his office, which no one really used since his passing, so it was already kind of odd that it was in my room and not the office. My grandfather died pretty shortly after prison, and close to a decade before I was born. So this watch was a minimum of 25 years old by the time I came across it. It was not working when I first put my hands on it. I left the room to tell my mom what I had found and took it with me. I returned to the room with the watch, having learned of its origins from my mother, and left it on the dresser. I returned to it later and picked it up. I was looking it over when the hands began to twitch on their own accord. I hadn't adjusted anything or touched the open clock face. This freaked me out thoroughly. I jumped a bit out of shock. I put the watch back on the dresser and rapidly left the room. But I will admit, I'm jumpy by nature. After informing my mom of what happened with the watch, she laughed and reminded me that my grandfather had a thing with clocks where they would always break or stop when he would buy them and bring them home. He had another clock, porthole themed, on the wall in the living room that hadn't worked my entire life, so it was only appropriate that a watch he had made would only work A, after he had already passed, and B, with the sole purpose of startling his granddaughter. I'm just grateful I was spared the sight of the boxers. It's been kind of quiet since then, which I'm only half glad for, because this and the other incidents were super interesting while they lasted, and they brought me closer to my grandparents in a weird way. Happy spooky season. Stay freaky, Katie. Well, it's not spooky season anymore, but it kind of always is.
It always is here on the Box of Oddities, or in this case, the inbox of Oddities. Hannah writes, I was relaxing in bed, about to start some adult activity, and I went to my favorite adult website. What do I see? A page explaining it's no longer available in my state. North Carolina has decided we need age verification to enter adult sites, and this particular site didn't want to be hacked for personal ID. So instead, I throw on the podcast to cool down, only to hear Jethro mention ruin porn. Yep, like this is my life. It's been ruined for sure. I do recognize that that's not the kind of porn we were talking about, but it definitely added salt to the wound. Ruin porn. It's beautiful, though. To me, it's the allure of nature taking back what's hers. How nature finds ways to slowly crawl its way up the sides of roller coasters and plant new life into something old. To be fair, You only talked about roller coasters, but the second most common is mental health facilities. To me, it's leaving the gross and dark activity where it belongs, in the past. The uneasy feeling you get that is unique to standing in an establishment where so many people have suffered and taking in the awe of a mixed bag of preserved history and the macabre, the feeling of misery, and yet the beauty of it. It turns it into something new, knowing eventually it will be untouched and left to Mother Nature to decide what to do with. Thanks, Hannah. And
Hannah, I have to say, it was ruined for you, but your writing is very sexy.
It's very sexy, Hannah. Also, maybe get a VPN. That'd probably help.
Is that one of those new toys?
No. It's something else entirely.
And you know, in years past, late submissions for the Halloween episodes would have bummed us out. But in this case, it works out.
Hello, Kat and Jethro. Wow, my stomach is doing flip-flops. I can only imagine what it's like when you guys start sitting down in front of the microphone. But I've wanted to tell you guys this story for years. So it's a dream that I had when or maybe it wasn't a dream. I felt like I was awake, maybe. I'm not sure. I was probably 3 or 4 years old. I had gone to visit my dad. And at this time, my dad and his wife and my stepsister lived with my grandparents. And to kind of set the scene, the downstairs was like where the spare bedroom was, and my grandma's sewing room and a bathroom, and kind of like where like the garage and the cellars were for all of our canned goods. And we had gone to sleep. So my parents, or my dad and my stepmom, were sleeping in the guest room, and they had put my stepsister with all of her toys and everything in my grandma's sewing room, which had like a wall of windows that, like, in between them were glass bottles that they had found, I don't know, searching around like in Silver City, Idaho, or somewhere around in there. We had gone to sleep for the night, and I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and there was a door to the outside in my grandma's sewing room, and like the door opened up, and these weird, I don't know, like creepy creatures come running in. There was like a witch with them, you know, like a storybook witch, you know, green face with the hat and the black dress, and like, I don't know, the little creatures with her kind of reminded me of like the little gremlins or something. I don't know. They were like little furry things, not quite sure. Anyways, they all come like running into the room, and they like start taking over like all the toys inside the bedroom. And I was like watching them, and they were like laughing at me, and I like sat up and I didn't know what to do. So I got out of bed and went into my dad's room to go wake him up, you know, and I'm like, you know, Dad, like, wake up, you know, like, and I don't even, I mean, I was so young, but I remember them telling me, it's no big deal, just go back to bed. I'm thinking, no, it's a big deal. I left their bedroom, and I thought, well, my grandma and grandpa are upstairs, right? So I'm like, well, I'll go wake them up. And so I leave the bedroom, and I go to the stairs to go upstairs to wake up my grandparents, and there's no stairs. The stairs are missing. It's this big, like, black gaping hole. Anyways, I had no choice but to go back to bed where the witch and these creatures were. And so I remember going back to bed and telling them to leave me alone and like covering up my head. That's all I remember. But it was the weirdest dream. I remember it so very vividly. To speak about it to this day, it's like super crazy. Like I said, you know, 3 or 4, you don't really know. But anyways, there's my freak story. Anyways, hi, bye. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for hearing my story.
Spring? Is that you? Warmer temps mean new Allbirds styles. Meet the Super Light Collection, the lightest ever shoes from Allbirds, now in fresh colors. They've designed must-have travel styles for when you need to jet. The lighter-than-air feel and barely-there fit makes these shoes some of the most packable styles ever. That means more comfort and less baggage. Take the Super Light Tree Runner on your next adventure. Its cushy, lightweight foam midsole supports every step, and the extra outsole traction gives you the grip to just go for it. The eucalyptus fiber upper adds next-level breathability to keep you going all day. Plus, the Super Light Tree Runner is comfortable and ready to go right out of the box. So, what can you do in a super light shoe? What can't you do is the better question. And because they're super packable, the real question is, where are you taking them? Experience how Allbirds redefines comfort. Visit allbirds.com and use code SUPER24 for a free pair of socks with a purchase of $48 or more. That's ALLBIRDS.com, code SUPER24.
When Johann Rall received the letter on Christmas Day 1776, he put it away to read later. Maybe he thought it was a season's greeting and wanted to save it for the fireside. But what it actually was a warning, delivered to the Hessian colonel, letting him know that General George Washington was crossing the Delaware and would soon attack his forces. The next day, when Rall lost the Battle of Trenton and died from 2 colonial Boxing Day musket balls, the letter was found, unopened, in his vest pocket. As someone with 15,000 unread emails in his inbox, I feel like there's a lesson there. Oh well, this is The Constant, a history of getting things wrong. I'm Mark Chrysler. Every episode, we look at the bad ideas, mistakes, and accidents that misshaped our world. Find us at constantpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Sherry said, the first story happened 20 years ago. My dad was in a fatal car accident. Naturally, relatives were in town for the funeral. My aunt, his sister, and her friend were staying at my parents' house, as was I. We were all sitting in the big sectional couch sharing stories of my dad, things that he did to make us laugh, how helpful he was to others, and how we were awed by the amount of people that had come to his viewing to share their stories. This was later in the evening, around 11 p.m. or so. My parents' living room is rather large. There's probably 10 feet or so between the then sectional and the mantel over the fireplace. As we were talking about my dad, all of a sudden, every picture frame on the mantel fell off.
Ooh.
The way it happened, it was as though someone walked by and swiped them off the mantel. One might think, well, if one falls, it would be a domino effect. The only problem with that theory is there was a clock in the middle of the mantel, so the pictures were on either side. Needless to say, we were a little freaked out, but also comforted in the thought that he was there with us, hearing our stories and knowing how much we loved him. My second story also has to do with my dad. It happened a couple of years later. His nickname for me was Bear. I was in town, visiting and staying with my mom. She was out at some function, so I was there by myself. I was fixing something at the kitchen counter, and I don't remember what I was stressing over, but I was talking to myself, and I was angry. I suddenly felt cold, and I heard, very distinctly, in my ear, my dad's voice saying, "Don't be like that, Bear. Everything will be okay."
Wow.
I shared that with my family, and my aunt made me a little picture frame with that saying on it. I have it on my desk to this day. Thanks for letting me share. I love you guys. You all make my day all the time. There are countless times when I'm cracking up on my way to work while listening to the podcast. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Sherry, or Cherie.
Cherie, mon chéri.
Cherie.
Kayla, or Kayla, sent us this. I'm currently listening to box 562 when I suddenly remembered something that happened to me when I was younger, and I thought you guys might be interested. My grandfather died of an accidental drug overdose when I was 16 years old. He and I were incredibly close. His name was Marty, but when I was a baby, he used to chase me around, pretending to be a monster. He would hop out from behind the corners and yell, "Rawr!" to which I would then laugh and yell and run away. This became our thing when I was young, and I eventually began to call him Rawr until the day he passed.
Aww. Oh.
I would go by his house every day after school, and we would watch TV and snack on bad food until Mom would come pick me up. Needless to say, when he passed, I was absolutely devastated. He was my favorite person, and I was his favorite person. He died in November 2010, and in April of 2011, I had a dream. My birthday is March 9th, and it was my first birthday without him. A few weeks later, I had a very vivid dream, so vivid that I remember all the details to this day, 13 years later. In my dream, my grandfather came to visit me. I knew he was dead, so I was excited to see him. It took place in the apartment that I lived in when I was a child, where he first got his nickname. He hugged me in the dream and said, quote, "I'm sorry I'm late. They wouldn't let me come see you. I have to be quick, but I just wanted to wish you a happy birthday and to let you know I love you so much and miss you." Then the dream ended, and I haven't dreamt about him since. Just wanted to share something with you, that this is both heartbreaking and touching. To this day, I truly believe that my RAR came down to see me on my birthday. I love that story.
Me too. I also love the nickname RAR.
RAR.
It's so cute and sweet. Ashley told us straight up that she wasn't going to record her voice for the story because hearing it on the podcast would, quote, shatter her soul. My mom, she writes, and her fiance bought a house in 2009. We never really noticed anything going on until one night when I was putting my son down to sleep in the extra bedroom my mom used to use as the kids' playroom / closet overflow. He started hysterically crying and pointing at the corner of the room. Let's just say none of us wanted to know what he was seeing. Then the random noises started. We would hear the fridge shut, doors open, sounds of footsteps down the hall. And then one night, while my mom and I were watching TV, we hear what sounded like a large, heavy book hit the concrete floors in the basement. We investigated, as white women do, and nothing was out of place. The terrifying part was that we all began hearing each other's voices, only when we were absolutely home alone. Calling our names, talking, whispering in the next room. The only person who was ever touched was my stepdad. He was in his recliner in the basement watching TV in the house all by himself, and he felt a hand touch the top of his head. Behind him was the door to the rest of the unfinished part of the basement, where he had heard my voice before. No, thank you. Someone once told me that mimicking voices isn't what spirits do, but demons, on the other hand.
Yeah.
I was never at that house by myself at night after that. Years later, my mom had moved out. My stepdad told me that after she left, everything stopped. He never heard a sound or a voice. I guess some people just help bring out the evil in a house. Thank you, Ashley.
You know, I think there's a lot of truth to what Ashley is saying, that people can draw certain energies toward them. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are people that can draw the evil out of a house, even if it's not intentional.
Yeah, and then be affected by it like everyone else is.
And then it kind of feeds on itself. And the same is, I think, true of the opposite. There are good people that can bring the good out of a place.
Aw, that's nice.
I'm a glass half full kind of guy. This comes from Randall. Hey freaks, I'm a trucker from Kansas City and found your show this past summer during my divorce. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. Thank you so much for bringing me so much joy during a stressful time. I listen to your episodes all day, almost 5 days a week. I have an odd story. When I was in 7th grade, I had a habit of not taking my thick textbooks home with me from school. Well, one Monday, I decided to bring my math, science, and history textbooks home in my backpack. Yes, they weighed a ton, and I wore my pack over my right shoulder only. I woke up early Tuesday to walk to the church breakfast club for middle and high schoolers. As the sun crested the ridge,
Oh, I can picture it now.
I swung my pack to my left shoulder. There were no sidewalks on my street. I was about 100 yards from my house when I looked back to see my elderly neighbor pulling out of his drive in his pickup truck. I moved over to the soft shoulder and kept walking. I heard his truck approaching. When I glanced back, all I saw was his bumper plowing into my left side.
What?
The textbooks absorbed the brunt of the impact. I was still thrown 10 feet in the air, and the wind was knocked out of me, but I wasn't really hurt. He got out, made sure I didn't need medical attention, and then left.
What?
Fast forward, I get to the church breakfast. Yes, I kept walking to the church, not going back home.
Oh, my God.
The adults freaked out at how much blood was running down my front leg, where I had several rocks embedded below my left knee. They told me to call my mom and tell her what happened. Here's where it gets really odd. My little brother answered the phone and informed me my mom was in the shower. I told him to tell her I'd been hit and I was at church, but that I was okay. After I hung up, my mom came out and asked my brother who called. His words were, "Randall was hit by a truck, but he's okay." Mom was freaked out.
Yeah.
And asked where I was. His response, "I don't know, I think at school." So Mom spent 30 minutes calling the school, the police, the neighbors trying to find me. I didn't know this. So when I got to school, the staff was freaking out and pulled me into the office. When my mom got to the school, her first concern was not my well-being, but why I didn't come back home after the incident. My response was, I didn't want to miss breakfast. So thanks to my textbooks, wearing my backpack on the opposite shoulder, and moving over to the shoulder of the road, all things I never did, saved my life that spring morning. You guys rock, and I'm loving your show. Keep flying that freak flag atop the odd mountain.
I love it.
I love these stories. I love these emails. And trust us, we have reams and reams of stuff that we can't wait to share with you. But we're always looking for more.
Please share your story with us. Curator at theboxofoddities.com.
Whether you write it or record it, we look forward to receiving it.
Thanks for being the people that bring the good out of our house.
And we'll see you next time.
Until then, keep flying that freak flag.
Fly it proudly, you beautiful freak.
And so, let it be known that the Box of Oddities belongs to you, and its fate is in your hands. The Box of Oddities commits to the telling of stories of the strange, the bizarre, the unexpected. We wish to offer our deeply felt gratitude and appreciation for your patronage. TheBoxofOddities.com